if you actually love and respect the person that you are trying to reach, you will not insult their humanity with something inauthentic and good enough. So I'm not interested in AI as an arts replacement. Humans, we are designed to connect by breath and voice and waveforms, energy. That's what we are designed to do. So I am annoyed by the potential of it replacing me. And I also feel like it cannot replace me. If I'm only as good as a technician, then I'm replaceable. But if I bring my heart and soul and humanity, then of course I'm not replaceable.
Have you ever stopped to think about what makes your voice, your unique human voice, irreplaceable? In a world increasingly dominated by AI and automation, we're being asked to trade authentic connections for efficiency. But at what cost? Hey there, it's Angela. In this episode of Arts Redefined, I'm joined by Tavia Gilbert, an award-winning audiobook narrator and producer whose career has been built on the art of voice. Together, we're peeling back the curtain on the audiobook industry, exploring what it takes to bring stories to life, and asking a crucial question: can AI ever truly replicate the depth of human creativity? Tavia's insights will challenge how you think about art, technology, and the power of storytelling in ways you might not expect. This is a conversation you don't want to miss on Arts Redefined. Hello, Tavia. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm so pleased to be invited. Thank you for sharing your space with me.
I was going to go to AI. Talk to me about how AI is affecting your work, this industry, and what your thoughts are, future forward looking.
Yeah, I think AI is a really interesting tool that humans can use to potentially increase efficiency. And it is a supportive tool. I've started to explore it as a tool. I write narrative podcasts. That's a lot of my business as well. And just for fun, I went through the first preparation process with an interview and that I was going to be crafting a narrative piece out of, and ran it through ChatGPT and said, write me a compelling, cohesive, wonderful, delightful story with this interview, with this content. And it was so funny what came back. It was like a 5-minute just chuckle in the middle of my day. It's not a writing replacement. It's not an art replacement.
Well, can you describe, but talk to me a little bit about what that chuckle was for you, from someone who has spent so much time and years in developing narratives, conversation.
Yeah. It just fell so far short. It just wasn't. I mean, those AI tools, you really have to. What's interesting to me about the AI tools is that you have to think to get a great result or a usable result that then you can do something with. You have to really be specific about what you want and what you don't want. And that's kind of an interesting new way of thinking, and potentially an art form in itself, how you feed this machine. But I thought that I was pretty specific. Like the explanation I gave you was very brief. I was pretty specific and clear and detailed in what I wanted and and I spend maybe 10 hours writing something, a really solid first draft of a really beautiful narrative piece. And it takes so much deep thinking and feeling and space and contemplation. And this just like spit out this piece that just was so lifeless. Mm-hmm. But that's not about the voice, right? That's about writing voice. Voices. I was talking to my partner who's he's the executive producer for a publishing company. So we talk about audio a lot. And I said, the waveform of a human breath is a beautiful thing to me. Does the waveform of AI look different? And he said, yes, you can definitely tell the second you just look at the visual waveform. AI is the same across the board. A human waveform is all over the place. And that kind of visual block of I am AI is how AI feels to me in a voice. Even as it gets more and more sophisticated and they are starting to insert breaths and pauses and what they think is quirky, it is still so apparent to me because you can feel it. My ears and my heart are extremely attuned, so not the average, ears probably, but you can feel an absence. And also, I think, and I've written about this before, if you love your listener, if you want them to receive something that you brought up out of your soul to be of value, entertainment, comfort, disruption, if you actually love and respect the person that you are trying to reach, you will not insult their humanity with something inauthentic and good enough. So I'm not interested in AI as an arts replacement. Humans, we are designed to connect by breath and voice and waveforms, energy. That's what we are designed to do. So I am annoyed by the potential of it replacing me. And I also feel like it cannot replace me. If I'm only as good as a technician, then I'm replaceable. But if I bring my heart and soul and humanity, then of course I'm not replaceable.
This falls in so many areas that I talk about, and so you're pinging so many different thoughts, which is, I spent a good chunk of my time advocating for the arts. And
I
I
love you
say,
for that.
thank you. And I say, advocacy has to be authentic. It can't be automated.
No.
We've rolled into automation, right? And I spoke with a creative a while back, and he said, we've spent the last 25 years automating everything to be more, quote, efficient. But automation sucks the humanity out of everything. And creatives and creativity is the single thing that puts humanity into everything. So when I teach advocacy and help people advocate for arts, artists, etc., I talk about, the importance of story, authentic stories. I talk about the importance of engaging not in the state house halls or the halls of Capitol Hill, but it has to be local. It has to live every day, and you have to show the life behind. It's not about just the performance. It's about the process. I call it transformation happens during the in-between. And so a lot of what you are talking about reminds me of that. So I'm seeing this thread, and I think that perhaps we're also in this time of STEM and one-dimensional learning and taking the creative aspect out and putting that on the shelf, because arts and creativity is something that lives over here. We're all busy building something much greater over here. And that's where I'm spend every day saying, no, we're transactional and one-dimensional. If all we're going to focus on is science, technology, engineering, and math, and don't believe that to be inventive, you have to be creative. And
I also feel like two things. Every human soul, or every living soul, human or not, is a creative soul. Creativity is in every heart. It's not for creatives. And I always feel so like I want to hug people who say, oh, I'm not creative. I just want to like draw them in and comfort them and say, of course you are.
Yes.
That's your birthright. We are all creative. And STEM is also creative. Math and science is about human brains like blowing their own minds, and some of the best poets are scientists. There's no differentiation in human creativity and human creation. It's all like to try to compartmentalize humans is so silly and such a waste of opportunity for every soul to express their creativity. So they don't need to be separated, and they should not and cannot ultimately be separated. This late stage capitalism dystopia that we're all living in is very weird. And capitalism has the potential, in a lot of ways to be great, but this idea of profits over everything is it's so stupid. But I also think what an incredible world we would live in if this was not the way. If we were understanding the benefit to everybody, including financial abundance, when our creativity is tapped and we express ourselves. It's silly. I also wanted to say I listened to a voiceover of an AI that was a podcast interview conversation that the AI had scraped the URL, dumped the website content into their machine, and then had a male and female voice in conversation as a podcast interview. And I thought not only did that AI train on decades of public radio content with human people, creatives having amazing conversations, it's a facsimile of a style that was meant to make complicated information accessible to the layperson to enlighten, entertain, and educate that person. So this AI is approximating a sound that used to stand in for this helps you make sense. And they're taking away the humans that help you make sense. And that also made me chuckle, a little like tearful chuckle, but we have to be, we who care have to be thoughtful. What are we doing? We can do this. Why are we doing this? What's the benefit? Who benefits?
100%. Again, you're hitting on so many things that I focus on. So I've been working with a woman who is a brilliant mind, and she's been predominantly focusing on the social sector nonprofit world and how you have a high performance mindset, assessing outcomes. And so she built a tool for the social sector on how they measure their outcomes and impact. And I've been working with her the last 6 months to build a tool specifically for the arts. So
cool.
We will be able to measure empathy and kindness and creativity and critical thinking in real time, because I'm on a mission to revolutionize how we think of the arts, how we invest in the arts. I want to lead a renaissance of relevance. That if we knew truly how relevant the arts and creatives are, we would have increased resources and revenue. We would have creatives at the table first before anyone, because you're a problem solver, you're a critical thinker, and that's what creatives do. And so all of what you're saying, I think, is so valuable. And what I'm terming or phrasing this is, I want to create a new language and vocabulary so we can say, what's your ROA? What's your return on art? And it's exactly what you just said is, what is your why? Why do you do what you do? What outcome do you want to have? We can measure that outcome now and say, okay, here's the return on art.
Amazing. I applaud you. I'm excited for that. I think we need it. And I don't know. I also like the convergence of science and this artistic point of view. I've been so blessed to write a podcast called Stories of Impact for the last several years, beginning our 5th year in January. And it's scientific studies about the art. It's the art and science of human flourishing. So looking at, can you teach forgiveness? Can you measure forgiveness? Can you measure empathy and compassion in healthcare? Resilience and grit. How do those intersect with business and education? And we do have these ideas of silos, or we have been told to have ideas of silos. And it's exciting to see leaders like you take us to the next stage of understanding, depth, evolution, revolution, because these are all integrated. And hopefully you will change the world. I'm cheering you on. I'm here for it.
Well, it's a collective, right? You can't have a renaissance without a collective of individuals. So, and that's the main reason why I launched this podcast, was because I wanted to build a community of like-minded individuals where we had a space to come together to explore, complain, um, incentivize, or inspire, all of those, and
Mm-hmm.
share thoughts and what we're all working on, and because the unified voice is what's going to get us down that road and will help us revolutionize. So in my small way, I hope that this podcast lands somewhere to someone and resonates, to which then they can invite people to say, let's join this renaissance of relevance, and together we can shift that.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I see individuals or people who form a STEM school, for example, a STEM high school, and they now say, we've been in the STEM school business for 20 years, and we realize that when you put a student in front of a computer, all they learn is coding. It's one dimensional, it's transactional. So they now refer to STEM not as science, technology, engineering, and math, but they call STEM strategies to engage minds.
So cool.
Right? And when I heard that, I thought, yes,
Wow.
what they don't perhaps realize is they're saying we need creativity, we need creatives, we need artists, we need those that employ strategies that engage minds every day, which is exactly what you do in
Mm.
your work. Your
Mm-hmm.
work's dependent on you engaging minds, and you've
It
built a
is.
successful career doing that, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. But one thing that just hit me is we think our mind is in our brain. Our mind is in our gut. So an AI can replicate a brain, a processing system of thinking thoughts, but an AI cannot replicate a gut instinct and a visceral sense of something, and that something ancient that I've been alive on this planet for so many years, but I have knowledge and wisdom that is connected to my ancestors. And that shows up through my DNA and makes me a much more complicated person. And so, yes, strategies to employ minds is also employing your body, because your body is your mind. We're not mind, body, soul. We are integrated. But if we leave out, oh, we never need to know how to move. It's not important to know how to dance. Like we're in a dance with each other all the time. Human beings inherently make music. We are inherent artists. And that sort of mind body connection and the mind moving from where we think it is to where it really is, I think, is what you're getting at. And what that STEM redefinition now opens up possibility to educate and inspire the whole person.
100%. And I think we've seen that decline in creative thinking and creativity. We hear increasingly employers saying, for sure, the top 3 skills that they look for in employees is critical thinking, creativity, all of that. And I think it's a exercise that we have to continue to cultivate and practice, just like everything else. It doesn't just happen or not. It goes back to you saying you want to give a hug to any person who says, I'm not creative. I hear you. Well, when I met you, I immediately became intrigued with a career in audiobooks, which is something
Mm.
that I would not have thought about as someone is having a career in that. Can you talk a little bit about your journey and getting to this fabulous career as a narrator in audiobooks?
Yes, I can. I would redefine it. My career started as a career in audiobooks, and then it became a career in audio. And now I feel like what my career really has always been is a career in voice.
Ah,
That's the through
okay.
line through all of them. But there certainly have been stages, and I will definitely share my origin story, how I got into all of this. Um, I can start like way back, because I feel like my story of audiobooks and audio is a little bit unique. Um, I was born with deformed feet and started having corrective foot surgeries when I was 7 months old. And somehow, as a kid growing up in rural southern Idaho, by 4 years old, I knew that I wanted to be an actor. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know that I knew what that was. But I grew up with a father who read stories aloud at the dinner table, and we heard wonderful, wonderful books. And I grew up with Garrison Keillor and public radio. And so I grew up with audio storytelling. And later I read to my mother a lot of books. She's a wonderful reader, but has ADHD, so hard for her to sit and read a book. So stories and storytelling were just a part of my early life. And the context of the foot surgeries is that I did community theater and was aspiring to go to college and become an actor, all while having multiple surgeries throughout my, into my adolescence, into my college years. And so by the time I got out of college and had a BFA in acting and a body of work in community, I really wanted to be a full-time professional actor for my wages, for my life. It felt important to me to be a working actor, not a hobbyist, like my after hours situation. And my doctors had always told me, you cannot do that kind of physical work. I think doctors underestimate people's capacity many times. So that really wasn't true, but it sort of planted the seed that I needed to find a different way. So
Well,
then I went, yeah,
what
please.
I find is really interesting there is I'm waiting to hear that your parents said, how can you build a career in acting or that? But here you have a doctor telling you that it's a physicality
Mm-hmm.
that can't sustain that. But innately you felt that was something that you would find a way to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah, certainly.
that's that interesting component where as creatives, and you touched on a hobbyist versus being professional. I feel that when I talk to a lot of creatives, there's this sort of downplay or discounting what they do for a living,
Mm.
and that they're not as on par or equal to other professionals in other
Mm.
industries. Did you ever feel that way?
No, I feel like the reason it took me a while to come up to know is that I feel deep insecurity and, questioning myself constantly like any human being. But I think of all the things I've kind of questioned or struggled with doubt to get through, that's not one of them. I don't
So
know why, but
then that's
I appreciate
fantastic.
that.
Yeah. So go back to your doctor saying physicality. He didn't think that acting was the path for you.
Yeah, they all, like all of the he's didn't think, and they were all he didn't think that that was going to be feasible. Um, I graduated from college in Seattle from Cornish College of the Arts, moved to Portland, Maine to study audio documentary at the Salt Institute, and thought I would live in Portland for 6 months and then go back to Seattle. But I fell in love with Maine and felt like I was home for the first time, and stayed ultimately for 12 years studying audio, doing professional theater, doing theater at night, working as a litigation paralegal, having more surgery, really doing as much on camera work as I could, and just trying to dream my way to something that would be sustainable. And the audiobook trade publication, Audiophile Magazine, is published in Portland, Maine. So there happens to be a sort of robust audiobook sort of hub there. And that, I think, sparked my first awareness in around 2006 or 2007 as I was recovering from my last surgery. I was learning everything I could about the audiobook industry, thinking, I love voice. I've always been a singer. I was passionate about voice studies in college. This is storytelling. I'm an avid reader, have been since childhood. This is sort of the perfect thing for me. At that moment in the industry, people were no longer having to record books only in hubs like LA, Chicago, New York, DC. Home studios were just on the horizon. And so I was one of the early people in a home studio. Not my first maybe 25 titles. I rented studio space, but then I got a little booth, the same booth. It's, I don't know, 15, 16 years old at this point. Learned everything I could about it, got coaching and lessons, and then hustled really hard and like found my way, kind of like a water through over all the impediments, just found my way to do audiobooks. And it was just a great fit, a wonderful fit. So I left being a litigation paralegal after over 10 years, and I've been self-employed since 2007 full time. And then podcasts came into the mix, and then writing, I have an MFA in writing, and it grew and grew. So it looks a lot different than it did then, but that was the beginning.
So one thing, again, that I face is a lot of non-creatives or those that aren't in the arts and creative sector think that entrepreneurship belongs to business.
Mm.
And I actually teach at a university where they've got an arts management, arts entrepreneurship program.
Oh, I want to take it.
But they can't use the word entrepreneurship without arts in front of it because the business school won't allow it, which I think is ironic. Because as I'm hearing you tell your story, you are an entrepreneur at the very core.
Yeah.
You're the first I've met and talked to who has a career in audiobooks. So tell me a little bit about the audiobook industry as a whole, the challenges, how wide is it? Educate me a little bit on audiobooks and how it fits into the overall creative sector.
Yeah. Oh, I wish that I had at my fingertips the stat, but I can get you a stat or statistics that you might put in the show notes if people or point to places, because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it is an old industry. It's decades and decades old. At the time I entered, I think there were around like 100 full-time audiobook people who that was their day in and day out profession. Now there are thousands of people who do it. I don't know if there are thousands who make their full-time career in it, but there are thousands of narrators. It's a beautiful industry. It was such a good fit for my heart and soul because it is based on relationships. It is a really deeply supportive community. So we're speaking just a couple days a week and some days after Hurricane Helene. And one of the first responses in the audiobook community was to reach out to everybody to say, these are our colleagues and our friends, our loved ones who have been hit in this area. And we've fundraised, tens of thousands of dollars for them to support them. And that's really the nature of the industry. So I feel very blessed to have had this loving community space. It's also competitive. There are, when I first started narrating, I would get a book, and sometimes I would get word that I had been cast for a project or had a project assigned because the FedEx guy would come knock on my door and hand me a box with a ream of paper that had been photocopied, sort of large print for me to narrate from. And it quickly changed to iPads, and that sort of romantic knock on the door went away. But that was a fun beginning. But now it's just expanded so much. And there are all the major publishers. Blackstone Publishing was my very first client. They gave me a year of work, just book after book, and then started referring me to places. So how beautiful to have somebody believe in you and give you work, a book a month for a year. And now, so there's, all the major publishers and lots of independent publishers, small, mid-size, independent authors who are producing their own works. It's just become much more of a busy industry, and lots of sort of peripheral industries around it. But it's one of the most successful parts of publishing, and it makes me very proud to be part of a growing sector of publishing and keeping people telling stories and listening. That's our oldest human connection, of course.
Absolutely. And so part of our community here are young professionals who are looking for different careers or how they can apply their unique talent to different parts of the sector. And you write that, or you address in some of your teaching or coaching, that just because you're a stage actor or because you've done commercial work, does that automatically mean that you qualify as an audiobook narrator? Can you address that question for those who might think about perhaps maybe audiobooks is a route for them?
Yes. No, just because you're an actor in some genre and have training doesn't mean you're prepared. And I wasn't. So I had a great conservatory training and a lot of work, and then a couple years of professional work after that. And I felt quite ready and went to somebody auditioned for him, and he said, "You are not ready. Go listen. just listen to everything. He gave me a recommendation list. Listen to how the stories move, how they're, what the technique is. So I listened for a year and did more work for a year and came back and auditioned. And he said, no, you're not ready. And I was like, oh, I am ready. I would be great at this. And I was absolutely not ready. So then I went and I got coaching and I trained and I listened enough. So I listened through the story to the technique, to how is she controlling her breath? How did he make that woman's voice sound authentic or not? What's the feeling I'm having and what did they do technically in their acting craft to get me there? Not being entertained by the story and sort of taken away by it. So really then investing in that specific coaching. It's mic technique, it's breath, it's relaxation, it's all the character work in the world that you can imagine. It's really understanding writing craft. It's elevating writing craft that was not already elevated. It's getting out of the way of literary craft that's so beautiful. It's like plays on so many levels that you just have to let it move through you. It's an incredible craft. I absolutely adore it, and I'm so proud of it. So I hope people do pursue the possibility.
Do you read the book first,
Mm-hmm.
and do you read it once? How do you prepare to do a recording? And then I know the length of the recording, the time that you would invest, I'm sure is different given the length of the book. But what are maybe some misconceptions about preparation for and actually doing the work?
Mm-hmm. This is where a lot of business comes in. So audiobooks as an industry are generally priced by the finished hour. So I will get a flat rate, a flat fee per 10 hours if the book for the listener is 10 hours long. One finished hour of audio is about 9,500 words. So I have a 95,000 word manuscript. It's about a 10-hour book. The narrator gets 10 hours times their flat fee. So that means that if I read it 4 times, I'm making far less money than if I read it once and I'm ready to go and record it. And in the recording, I'm efficient about how I use that time. We don't get royalties for the most part. 98% of us don't get royalties. In the sort of traditional publishing model, there are other models now that we're not, that are newer to the industry. But as a rule, there aren't royalties. So you finish your project, you get paid your fee. That's the end of the compensation, like residuals in television or film. So a great narrator has to be a fabulous performer, an emotionally available and intimate, connected performer. They also have to be efficient about their time. So when I get a book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, I'm reading it with the same mindset. I'm prepping it. It's unfortunately not the delicious experience of reading a book. And I do miss reading. And sometimes I feel like, oh, I hardly read anything this year. I recorded 50 books, but I didn't read anything for me. So it's a different mindset. But when I go through a manuscript, I'm lightly marking on my iPad with iAnnotate as my program. Every character that enters the scene and all of their physical, psychographic, demographic information, their physical description as well. I'm marking all of the vocabulary that I need to look up to ensure that I'm pronouncing it correctly. That's almost always my responsibility to do that prep. And that's so important. I'm marking in green all the post-dialogue attributions. She screamed, he hissed, they, roared. I need to know what that line felt like to the author, to what their direction is for me as a performer, so that I know they tell me after the fact, but I need to have that scene really come to life. And we all have our own styles. I'm very cinematic, so I hope to make it like very active, like you're watching it in front of your eyes. But so I want to really play with that. And I also need to know the sort of arc of a scene. If somebody's getting drunker and drunker over the course of 5 pages, I need to know that is coming so that I can really embody that character fully. That's about all. Oh, and then I specifically mark, voice qualities. If there's her soprano, um, her high soprano voice. I need to know that from the beginning. So, but I'm not marking much more than that.
Are you changing your voice? And I hope I can ask this question the way that I mean. Do you change your voice pitch or based on male, female? Or are you reading it consistently in your voice, but perhaps you're changing the intonation? Again, I don't know if that's the right question,
Yeah,
but hopefully
I
you
think
get it.
it's a subtle difference, but it really depends on the book. Most often, I am doing distinct character differentiation. As I said, I'm a pretty cinematic reader, and so my characters, I aim to have them sound very distinct with changes in pitch, rhythm, musicality, pacing, texture. Um, but some books, like I have had the blessing of narrating quite a lot of Annie Ernaux, the French writer, and she's telling first person uh, nonfiction, sort of blurred fiction accounts of her life. So in that, when she's speaking with a lover, I'm not going to have a distinct character voice that's sort of big, and it fits within the world, the energy that she's created. I have to fit within that and not distract from it. So that any differentiation in character would be very subtle, if anything at all. It's just every book, it has its own personality.
Do you talk with the author prior to recording? Do you consult with them on, or is this your own, what you're taking from what you're interpreting the
Yeah.
author's intent?
Occasionally, I've spoken with the author in advance, particularly around pronunciation details. But generally, no. It's most of my work comes through traditional publishers who give me auditions or cast me for projects. So anything that they need, the author needs me to know, would go through them. More and more, I am producing work for people who come to me independently or smaller publishers. Um, and so then I would be in that position as the producer of the project in addition to the narrator. And I'm producing projects that other people are narrating. So I'm interfacing more there. But the narrator, I feel like as a person who has a writing craft and a narration craft, I can really say everything should be on the page. The writer has to put it all on the page. So there shouldn't need to be a lot of discussion in advance because it's the book should be fully realized.
What involves being a producer then? If you're the what differentiates those roles?
So, for example, I had a very cool gentleman from the sort of film world, independent film world, come to me, and he has first novel, the first of a trilogy of 3 trilogies. And he wanted me to, or he invited me to narrate that book. As I looked at it, I thought I could narrate this, but I am not the right voice for this. It needs to be a more youthful, like a young woman of Cuban heritage, a sort of ironic, wry, really contemporary young sound. But my company, Talkbox Productions, we can produce this. So I said to him, I will audition for you to sort of prove to you that I'm not the best person to voice the story. And I'll get 5 or 6 auditions from other talent and presented them. And he said, oh, I love her. And I was like, yes, she's perfect for it. So then I want to make sure that I'm casting thoughtfully and then that we're producing, working with the narrator to give them all the information. Here's the song that those lyrics go to. Here's the melody that came from the author. We have the rights to put that in the book. Can you sing it? Sounds great. We'll leave the song in, and producing so that then there are listener ready files ready for distribution. And I'm just facilitating that project. So we're doing a lot of that in fiction and nonfiction, and it's great fun and just a growing part of the business.
I will never again um, question the price of an audiobook again. This is so fascinating to me. All of the work technique and talent and preparation that goes
Mm.
into each recording.
Hmm.
I'm fascinated by the process. But we're at the time of the podcast where I like to close out with asking each guest 2 questions. And first, Tavia, we will have Talkbox Productions information in the show notes and anything else on how anybody can reach you. But before we go, how do you define the arts?
I don't know. What came to mind first is humanity, but I don't even think that that's right because I feel like animals are so creative. Like we can't just look at humans as the epitome of creators of art. Um, so I guess art is self-expression or collective expression, collective voice. Um, Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what art is, expressive voice. And that comes from the birds. It comes from the opera singer. It comes from community. Uh, it comes from Quaker spaces where people sit and listen in silence to each other. That's an expression of the arts in its way. Um, I don't think that there's a really defined answer, but I think it is the expression of one's voice.
Something that's living is what I'm hearing. It
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah.
It's not an object.
Yeah. Not first.
Right. That's beautiful. And then lastly, what color do you love the most and why?
Oh, that's such a lovely question. I love coral, like a pinky orangey coral, and it just makes me feel it's warm and it's really visceral and just brings me like a warm joy.
Has it always been coral?
I think it has.
Well, this
Yeah,
has been powerful, this conversation. I really
for
appreciate it.
me
I've been
too.
looking forward to this conversation for a long time. Again, we will have, Tavia, all of your information, how people can contact you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for sharing your insight today.
It's so